Chapter 49. Karen got up and sat down beside Kevin. She glanced at the table and found that there were more than a dozen dishes, most of which were spicy food, which was not suitable for patients after a high fever. After looking around, Karen fixed her eyes on a delicious bowl of porridge. Even if Karen didn't know much about medicine, she knew that the porridge had the effect of nourishing women and was healthy. She couldn't let Kevin drink this, given his condition. Kevin usually ate lightly, and these dishes were also made by this aunt. Why did she make such dishes when she knew he was sick? After glancing around, Karen looked at Kevin doubtfully. Are you sure these dishes were prepared for you by Aunt Jen? No. Kevin looked at Karen with deep and gentle eyes. I have already eaten. These are specially prepared for you by Aunt Jen. Karen asked in surprise. Was it prepared for me? Kevin nodded. His simple words swept away the unhappiness that was left in Karen's heart. It turned out that as she was worried about him, he had also missed her. Thank you. Karen looked at Kevin and smiled. She picked up her chopsticks and began to eat. Because of what had happened to Kevin that day, Karen was so worried that she was not in the mood to have breakfast, and lunch had been postponed until now. She was really hungry, so she didn't look very elegant while she ate. Kevin looked at her with deep eyes. After a long time, he said, Were you hurt today? Karen was not a person who easily shed tears. Kevin remembered this clearly. His intuition told him that she must have been very upset. Karen paused to pick up the food, looked up at him, and said in a choked voice, Yes, I was hurt. Tell me, if anyone dares to bully you, I will take revenge. Kevin's words sounded like a joke, but he paid attention to every subtle change of her expression. You're the one who hurt me. Karen really wanted to say so, but after thinking about it, she decided not to. Even if she said it, he could not give himself 2 slaps on the face for her. Knock knock. Suddenly, a knock on the door interrupted their conversation. Nick pushed the door open and walked in. He put a document in front of Kevin and said, Director Kevin, this document needs your signature. Nick brought the documents over to Kevin and showed them to him one by one. Then he spoke to Kevin in French. Karen didn't understand what he was talking about. She could only make out some words. It sounded like they were discussing something that Kevin wanted to buy. While they were talking, Kevin had finished reading the documents. He took the pen handed over by Nick and signed his full name, Leo Kevin Kyle. Nick put away the documents and left. Kevin glanced casually at a lunchbox on the tea table. Kevin had a fond memory of this thermal container. The last time Karen had prepared simple sushi in it for him. What's that? He looked at the thermal lunchbox on the other side of the side table and asked softly. Karen followed his gaze and looked over. When she saw the thermal lunchbox she brought over, she stammered, No, it's nothing. Huh? Kevin raised his eyebrows and looked at Karen quietly. Karen was flustered, so she had to say honestly, I brought you vegetable porridge. I was worried that you wouldn't like it, so I didn't take it out for you. Kevin coughed lightly and said very seriously, Karen, you are not me. How would you know that I don't like it? You haven't asked me and haven't given me a chance to choose. How can you decide for me? At that time, when he had decided to marry Karen, he would try to accept everything about her, whether it was good or bad. But recently, Karen gave him the feeling that she didn't trust him. Karen lowered her head and whispered like a child who had done something wrong. Okay, I won't make decisions for you without asking for your opinion in the future. Seeing Karen lowering her head like a small child, Kevin felt that it was a little funny and said, I'm actually hungry. Please bring me a bowl. All right. Karen took the lunchbox and said, This is kale porridge. It may be a little bit bitter. Is that all right with you? I'm not a picky eater. Kevin was actually very picky. He was only not picky when Karen cooks. He could eat whatever she made. Just like last time, although he knew that he was allergic to onion, he still ate it. In the end, he had to get an injection at the hospital. After they had gotten married, he had been working very hard to be a good husband. Is it nice? Karen looked at him and asked with a smile. Not bad. This time, Kevin generously praised her and ate a big mouthful. Seeing Kevin eat the porridge she had cooked personally, a hint of sweetness rose in her heart, as if she was getting closer to him. Kevin usually wouldn't say nice words to her, but when he knew that her hands and feet were cold, he would prepare gloves and warmers for her. He showed his care with actions. During this period of time, she slept very well every night. She had rarely woken up because of cold hands and feet like before. Kevin was eating the porridge when Amelia Gray knocked on the door, accompanied by a doctor. The doctor was the one who had given Kevin the injection. Karen had seen him in the morning. The doctor's eyes swept over Karen and finally fell on the bowl of porridge that Kevin had eaten. Young master, your fever hasn't subsided, and it may cause other symptoms at any time. So please eat food that is strictly made by us for the time being. It will be bad if it becomes a bacterial infection. Hearing the doctor's words, Karen felt very uncomfortable, which clearly meant that her food was not clean. Yes, she admitted that she knew Kevin less than they did. They were all people who had been at Kevin's side for a long time and had a close relationship with him, but she was Kevin's wife. Just as Karen was distressed, Kevin suddenly held on to her. His low and deep voice sounded slowly and firmly in her ear. Special Assistant Amelia, Dr. Stephen, let me introduce my wife, Karen Daly, to you. My wife, Karen Daly. These simple words quickly pierced her heart, softened it instantly, and she looked at Kevin quietly and tenderly. He was right. From the day they got married, Karen Daly was no longer Miss Daly, but Mrs. Kyle. Kevin looked at Karen again, and his eyes softened. Karen, Special Assistant Amelia, and Dr. Stephen have been working with me for a long time. We seem to be working together, but in fact, we are all friends. They are like my relatives. Kevin's words were very pleasant, but once again emphasized the true relationship between them. Chapter 50. Amelia and the others had been with him for many years. He treated them like friends and relatives, but more importantly, Karen was his wife. Dr. Stephen also knew that what he had just said was too impolite. He smiled awkwardly and said, Mrs. Kyle, nice to meet you. Karen smiled politely and said, Hello, Dr. Stephen. Amelia added, This morning because I was too anxious, my tone towards Mrs. Kyle was impolite. Please forgive me. They had been by Kevin's side for many years. They were capable of handling affairs and were trusted by him. After so many years, they seemed to have become half of Kevin's family. It was because they knew Kevin too well and knew that he wouldn't get sick easily. If he ever got sick, it would be very serious. That was why things had unfolded the way they did this morning. Because they hadn't known Karen for a long time, they naturally regarded Karen as an outsider during an emergency. Only after did they feel something was not right. Karen was about to speak when Kevin said, Karen, do you know what a marriage certificate means? Karen was a little confused and did not know what Kevin wanted to say. Kevin looked at Amelia and Dr. Stephen and said slowly, In theory, if two people get their marriage certificate, it means that they will give their lives to each other. Let's suppose I am seriously ill today. I will have to get my family's signature to save me, and the person who can give this signature is you, Karen. In Karen's opinion, a marriage registration was for two people to start living together. If things went well, they could continue to live together. If things do not go well, they could break up anytime. She had never thought that in Kevin's eyes, a marriage certificate was so important. In other words, he was willing to entrust his life to her. Hearing his words, Amelia and Dr. Stephen looked at each other. What Kevin said was not unreasonable. If there were an emergency among the people in the room, only Karen would have this right. Kevin continued to say, If you want to change my medicine, help me change it quickly. After that, you may leave. Don't come in and disturb me if you have nothing to do. Yes. The doctor quickly changed Kevin's infusion bag and administered medicine for him. Young master, there is a small amount of sleeping draught in this medicine. You can take a nap after taking it. As soon as the doctor and Amelia left, Kevin looked at Karen with keen eyes and patted on the bed. Come and lie down with me for a while. Okay. Karen walked over and lay down beside him. As soon as she lay down, Kevin stretched out his arm and held her in his arms. He buried his head between her shoulders and neck and smelled her fragrance. Karen? Puh. Karen did not struggle and let him hold her. I didn't see you when I woke up here today. I don't know why I felt so disappointed. Kevin's low and sexy voice came over her head. When he spoke, his breath surrounded her head, which made her heart beat faster and her face blush again. His words were not terms of endearment, but they made her feel more moved than if they were. Karen guessed that Kevin must have been an expert at flirting with girls. However, for someone like him, there was no need to flirt. There must have already been a lot of beautiful women pouncing on him. Karen did not answer him with her voice. She gently held his waist and rubbed her face against his chest. Kevin, I won't let you down anymore. If such a thing would happen again in the future, Karen would not allow others to take Kevin away, and she would definitely accompany him to take care of him as his wife. Kevin did not answer. She lay in his arms for a long time and was so tired that her muscles were almost cramped. She looked up at him quietly and saw that he had already fallen asleep. The doctor had just said that he added a sleeping draught in Kevin's medicine. She wanted him to have a good sleep first, which would help him recover. Karen took his hand away carefully and gently moved in his arms, wanting to change to a more comfortable position to lie beside him. However, although she just moved slightly, Kevin, who was already asleep, subconsciously tightened his arms. Karen couldn't help but frown. Her tender lips slightly raised and her arms around Kevin unconsciously tightened. It was drizzling. The temperature dropped several degrees in an instant, as if winter had officially begun in an instant. However, not only were the people of California not affected by the cold weather, but it was lovelier than ever these days. When the news that the current leader of Rovio, known as Leo Kyle, was about to move the domestic headquarters to California, all the elites in business from all over the country gathered in California to make a scene. For a moment, it was so lively that it added new scenery to the cold winter. Rovio Corp was going to develop in California and move the headquarters there, which meant it was a gold mine. The entry of Rovio would bring greater business opportunities. Some people came here to investigate the market, and some people came here to see the head of the Rovio, Leo Kyle, hoping to cooperate with Rovio. Amongst those who wanted to see the head of Rovio was Charlie, son of the Gook family. He wanted to gain more trust from his father, Bernard, and to gain greater power, so the most direct and effective way was to find a way to cooperate with Rovio. He had already sent his secretary to deliver several invitations to Rovio, but every time, the head of Rovio had responded that he was busy and did not have time at the moment. 1 or 2 times was already a lot, but Charlie had been rejected more than 10 times. He didn't even get on the waiting list for appointments. Charlie's patience was almost worn out. Looking at Charlie, who was sitting at his desk and frowning, Duncan wanted to speak several times. In the end, he couldn't help but say, "Young Master Charlie, I heard that the person who wants to see him had been already assigned to appointment 3 months later. It's really not easy to meet him. He's not trying to avoid us. Appointments 3 months later? Let's think if there are any other shortcuts. The sooner we see him, the better." Charlie had just taken over some of the Gook family's businesses, but many high-level executives seemed to be not very satisfied with him. Therefore, he was eager to meet Rovio's Leo Kyle and cooperate with him so that those people who looked down upon him would know his power. Duncan thought for a moment and said, "Young Master Charlie, I heard some news recently, but I don't know if it's true." Charlie looked at Duncan coldly. "If you have anything to say, just say it." "Why are you making me guess?" Duncan added. "The Kyle family is low profile. No media has ever taken photos of Leo Kyle. His personal life has always been the focus of people's attention, but no one has heard anything about it. But recently I heard that he is very fond of women. Some people say he can take on 6 women a night." Hearing this, Charlie's eyes lit up, but it was not easy for him to believe the rumor. He asked, "Where did you hear this news?" Chapter 51. None of the major media could get such explosive news about Leo Kyle. How did they get it, and who would have the courage to expose such news? The Kyle family was a well-known family, which was rich and noble, and also put great importance on the etiquette of family members. Therefore, there wasn't any bad news or scandals about the Kyle family in the past few years. Either they hid deep enough or they really trained themselves to be restrained. Anyways, the Kyle family always gave people the impression that they were low-key and polite. Hearing such news, Charlie was very excited, but also felt a little worried at the same time. If the news were true, then he would ask Duncan to find a few beautiful women to serve Leo Kyle. If the news were false, sending women to Leo Kyle would be pointless, which might even cause trouble to himself. So before deciding to do this, Charlie must know the source of the news and how reliable it was. Of course, Duncan knew what was going through Charlie's mind, so he told Charlie about everything he had learned about the news. "Master, when I first heard this news, I had already asked our guide to investigate it." Charlie asked urgently, "So, what have you found?" Charlie hoped that the news was true. It would be great if sending him a few women could impress him. Moreover, Charlie thought that he had great ways of finding women. "I've asked someone to follow the clues, and finally found out that the news came from Starbiz Entertainment Company. The news was spread by a main actress from the crew." Meanwhile, Duncan quickly took out his mobile phone and showed a photo. "This is the actress named Polaris. She has become very popular recently." The woman in the photo was wearing heavy makeup, so it was very hard to see her true appearance. But judging from her facial features, it could be seen that she was a beautiful girl. Duncan continued. "Polaris claimed to be Starbiz's Leo Kyle's girlfriend. At first, everyone thought that she just wanted to become popular by exploiting his name and to increase her popularity in the company. Then she really showed a photo of her and Leo Kyle with the mansion of the Kyle family in the United States as the background of the picture. Find out the other photos and let me have a look." As Charlie was listening to this, he became even more excited, as if he had caught a life-changing chance. Duncan quickly looked through a few more pictures and found 2 other photos. "Young Master Charlie, do you think that this mansion is the same as the one described by the media?" Charlie asked Duncan to send the photos to the computer so he could see them closely. The mansion in the photo was not magnificent. Instead, it gave off an impression of a leisure villa. This photo looked similar to the description in the news that the media spread. As the Kyle family was known to be low profile, they were quite sure that this was the mansion that belonged to the Kyle family in America. As for the other photo, there was a man in the photo. The man was wearing a blue suit that gave off a strong and dominant aura. As for his appearance, the man was very good-looking. He had definitely inherited the excellent genes of the Kyle family. He looked like in his 28. That man was definitely Leo Kyle. The paparazzi spent a lot of effort to get a picture of Leo Kyle but still failed. Who would have known that ultimately it would be revealed by an amateur? It seems that this matter is true. Charlie stood up excitedly and walked around. After thinking for a while, he said, "Find a way to arrange a meeting with that famous actress named Polaris. I want to confirm the news through her personally." They wanted to see Leo Kyle again and again but never succeeded. In Charlie's opinion, they might not share the same interests. Now that he got his hands on such exciting little news, Charlie must seize this opportunity. Duncan looked embarrassed and said, "Young Master, I went to invite her when I got the news last night, but she has a bad temper, and she didn't want to meet with us." "You can't even do that?" Charlie smirked. "You can't even convince a little girl? Do you want me to invite her by myself instead?" Duncan wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. "That girl is associated with Leo Kyle. Even if we ignore her wishes, we still have to show some respect to Leo Kyle. I'll see her in person then. This woman had all these photos in her hand, which showed that her relationship with Leo Kyle was absolutely not an ordinary one. Charlie thought that maybe he could get to know more about Leo Kyle through this woman. I'll arrange it now, said Duncan, who then turned around and was about to do what his master had told him to. Duncan? Charlie stopped him. No matter if the news were true or not, you'd better find some good-looking women first. Choose a few different ones. There will definitely be one that will fit Leo Kyle's preference. Duncan said with a cheeky smile. Young Master Charlie, don't worry. I am good at this aspect. I can guarantee you that the women chosen are all top beauties. By that time, young Master Charlie, you may even have a go first. Charlie grabbed the teacup from the table and threw it at Duncan. You idiot. Young Master Charlie, you used to. Before he could finish his words, Charlie glared at him. Duncan quickly changed the subject. I was wrong. In your heart there will only be Miss Daly. What did you say? An idea popped up in Charlie's mind. Although this idea was despicable, it was already in Charlie's mind at the moment. Young Master Charlie, what do you want me to say? Duncan asked carefully and cautiously. Who were those people who cooperated with him, and who is Starbiz's Leo Kyle? What kind of woman he'd never seen before? An ordinary woman doesn't catch his eyes. Charlie tried to suppress some thoughts and added, when you look for women, use the second daughter of the Daly family as a standard. Young Master Charlie? Duncan wanted to say something, but he was shut down by Charlie's cold stare. He was muttering secretly that his young Master Charlie was trying to make his job harder. The second daughter of the Daly family gets more and more beautiful each day. It would be impossible to find a woman as beautiful as the second daughter of the Daly family. If his young master didn't fall in love with the second daughter of the Daly family, he could just present him to Charlie. Then he would not need to look for the women everywhere anymore. Duncan was surprised by his thoughts. He looked up and patted his chest to calm himself down. If his young master knew this idea, the young master would definitely kill him. But little did Duncan know, Charlie just had the same idea as his. Duncan's mind was hung up on Karen, the same Karen who used to be in love with Charlie and is now married to someone else. In the past, Karen's heart was full of Charlie's love, and the same goes for Charlie too.